I used to think my marriage was my choice, a union between two souls shaped by love, if not always passion. But the deeper I dug into family pasts, the more I realised that love often had nothing to do with it. For example, Lady Margaret was promised to a man she barely knew at a time when the monarch, yes, the king himself, could decide who she married. And what shocked me the most, it wasn't scandalous, it was normal. So how did we get here? To a world where most of us take it for granted that we can marry whoever we choose. And more pressingly, how is it ever okay for a monarch to decide who you married? Lady Margaret was born in 1792, well after the Glorious Revolution, but not yet in a world most of us would recognise. She was bright, educated in French and Latin, a skilled rider, but none of that mattered. What mattered was her dowry. Her father's estate bordered that of the Earl of Westmoreland, and when the Earl needed to solidify his family's standing at court, Margaret's name ended up on a letter to St James's Palace. So why did that letter matter? Because the monarch still held the royal prerogative, an ancient set of powers dating back centuries. Among them, the ability to approve or veto marriages among the nobility, and crucially, to reward loyalty with marriage matches. It's not that every marriage was arranged by the crown, far from it, but when land, titles, or political loyalty were involved, the monarch's influence was never far behind. So why was marriage tied so closely to land? In a world where power flowed from land, marriage was how you consolidated it. Titles were passed down bloodlines, and keeping those bloodlines pure, in the eyes of aristocrats, was a matter of national importance. Take the case of Anne Boleyn. Her rise and fall hinged not just on her personal charm, but on the political implications of her marriage. Henry VIII broke from the Catholic Church to marry her, triggering the English Reformation. And yet, when she failed to produce a male heir, even that revolutionary marriage couldn't protect her. The monarch's power to grant or deny marriages was a tool of control, one that could elevate a family overnight or cast them to ruin. Even as late as the 18th century, royal permission was required for members of the royal family to marry. The 1772 Royal Marriages Act gave the reigning monarch a legal veto over royal unions, a law not repealed until 2015. But this wasn't only about kings and queens, so why did ordinary noble families go along with it? Lady Margaret wrote in a letter to her sister that she had little cause to complain, as many women have endured worse. She wasn't forced at sword point, but she had no real say. Social custom, economic dependency, and the royal expectation had already made the decision for her. In the world she lived in, marriage was a social contract with political consequences. To defy the monarch's wishes, even indirectly, could mean losing your position at court, your family's inheritance, or worse. Even for those outside the aristocracy, this trickled down. The idea of marrying up or being given away echoes this dynamic. It was all about alliances, not affections. But how did this system begin to crumble? The late 18th and 19th centuries brought a philosophical shift. The Enlightenment popularised the idea of individual rights. Slowly, legal reforms followed. In 1836, civil marriage was legalised in England and Wales. Suddenly, marriage didn't have to involve the church or royal oversight. It was the beginning of love becoming, at least in law, the central pillar of marriage. But change was slow. The pressure of class still loomed large. Women especially remained economically dependent on marriage, and divorce practically unheard of until the 20th century. And yet the seeds of change had been planted. But who was brave enough to challenge royal authority on matters of the heart? In 1936, King Edward VIII abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson, a divorced American. It was a constitutional crisis, but also symbolised something deeper: the declining grip of the monarchy on personal life. The monarchy's say over noble and royal marriages was no longer seen as sacred. Edward's defiance marked a turning point in how marriages were viewed, not just as a duty, but as a personal choice. Meanwhile, ordinary women were also pushing back. Lady Margaret's great-granddaughter married a schoolteacher. No title, no estate. Her mother disapproved, but no monarch intervened. Why? Because the balance of power had shifted. So what finally broke the monarch's grip on marriage? By the late 20th century, the monarchy's powers were mostly ceremonial. The 2015 Succession to the Crown Act formally repealed the Royal Marriages Act, meaning only the first 6 in line to the throne now require royal consent to marry. Everyone else, free to choose. This symbolic shift reflected deeper changes: gender equality, legal reforms, the rise of romantic love as a central narrative of marriage. Lady Margaret's letters now feel like relics: beautiful, tragic, restrained. She made peace with the life chosen for her. But I wonder, if she were born today, what would she have chosen? And what does this tell us about power and who gets to wield it over the most intimate parts of our lives? We like to think of love as timeless, something above politics, immune to power. But history tells us different stories. For centuries, love was a luxury, one that the powerful could deny in service of their own ends. Lady Margaret's quiet acceptance wasn't weakness, it was survival. But every generation after her carved out a little more space for choice, for agency, for love. And yet, the past still whispers. Rules still remain. What else was once normal that now feels unthinkable? Next time, we turn to something even stranger. Thank you for walking a little further down the road that made Britain with me. The story winds on. Try this one, for instance. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you very soon.